Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, I also wanted to let you know that I am also going to be appearing as a guest on the Practically Tomorrow podcast, which is a GoTo's podcast hosted by Peter Mahoney, who is a guest on my show today. So this episode is going to drop on September 1st, and my episode where I'm a guest on their show should be dropping a couple days later. So make sure to check out their podcast as well. It is called Practically Tomorrow. You can find it on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you and enjoy this conversation with Peter Mahoney, the Chief Commercial Officer at GoTo. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Future Ready Leadership. My guest today is Peter Mahoney, the Chief Commercial Officer at GoTo. Peter, thank you for joining me.
Jacob, thank you for having me.
All right, before we get into some of the fun stuff, why don't you let people know a little bit more about you and your company? Because people might be very familiar with your former company name, and then you guys have rebranded. When did you rebrand, actually? What year was that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So GoTo used to be known as LogMeIn, and LogMeIn has been around for quite some time. And it was rebranded back about 4 years ago. I guess it was 2021 when we rebranded the company as GoTo. And then interesting to me, I don't know if anyone else, we actually just reintroduced LogMeIn as a product family. And
super cool.
So people may know of LogMeIn from the day, and LogMeIn is a leading product in everything from remote support to IT management capabilities, so device management, things like that IT people and MSPs use. And the other part of the business is cloud-based communications, so you may use like a business phone system for customer experience that mostly small to medium businesses and distributed businesses use. So that's what we do. We're about $1 billion company, just to kind of put it into scale.
Well, and how many employees do you guys have now?
About 3,000 employees, and scattered all over the planet. And one of the things that's interesting about GoTo and our employees is that we're a remote first company. So we've got 3,000, almost all remote employees, which makes us good practitioners of remote working disciplines.
Okay, we're going to have to talk about that too, because as you know, there's a big debate in the business world right now going on around virtual work and in-person work. So we'll make sure that we get to that as well. But before we jump into that, looking at your background, I mean, you've been in this space for 30, 40 years. I did some
God, that makes me sound so old, Jacob. Don't do that.
Yeah,
yes, close to 40 years.
Some snooping on your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that you were a marketing rep at IBM back in 1987.
I was.
So what were you marketing at IBM in 1987?
So here's the funny thing. This may be too detailed, but I'm going to share it with you anyway, Jacob, because you asked this weird thing. So I went through college, and I was a physics and computer science double major, and I come from a family of scientists, and my dad and my older brothers were all PhD scientists, and they used to say, "What are you going to do when you graduate with your physics degree?" And I said, "I have no idea." I knew I didn't want to pursue a PhD, and I said that all I know is I'm never going to sell anything, because that seemed to me like plaid pants, white shoes, used cars kind of thing. So I ended up getting an interview with IBM for a technical job, which I thought would be interesting. And along the way, they said to me, "Hey, we think you'd work out really well in marketing." And I said, "Okay, I have no idea what that is, but let's give it a shot," right? So I show up at IBM, and they tell me I'm a marketing representative. And they give me literally the first day a pile about 6 feet high of white binders. So they read this, and you'll take a test on it in 60 days, and if you pass the test, you stay. So I'm going through reading all this stuff, and there's all this stuff about IBM and all of the products and some finance stuff, and then all this stuff about sales. And I realized, it took me about 3 weeks in, I realized, oh my God, when they said marketing, they actually meant sales. It's like if you work for Goldman Sachs in marketing, you're in sales. So I was not marketing anything. And in fact, I was there taking a sales job, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to quit. It ended up being one of the greatest experiences that I had, Jacob, because I learned just great empathy for customers and for salespeople. And I spent much of my career as a marketing executive. And that time that I spent for a few years actually selling something was surprising, but it had nothing to do with marketing.
What were you selling at the time?
A little bit of everything. So I did everything from mainframes back in the day to
like the huge mainframes, the ones that are like the size of a car?
Yes, the size of many cars in a lot of cases. So that kind of stuff to what we called mini computers. A mini computer was the size of like a couch, to desktop computers and everything in between. And one fun fact, I remember when we came up with the first, I think it was a 500 megabyte disk drive that we sold at IBM. And the price for a 500 megabyte disk drive in the 1980s, any guesses? It was $10,000.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was going to be way off. I was not even going to be close.
Yeah.
So when you left IBM, you were there, I was just looking it up. So John Akers was the CEO. So you left right before Lou Gerstner took over, right?
I did. It was right around the time that Gerstner came in, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's, because I'm familiar with Lou's story. I mean, he did some very interesting transformational work at the company. Many would say he even saved the company from the verge of bankruptcy. But it's interesting to hear you talk about selling these giant computers, the size of couches, the size of many cars. Since you've been in this space for a long time, what's been your kind of general perception? Because a lot of people, like my kids, for example, they're never going to know what a mainframe is. They're only going to know what an iPhone is, what an iPad is, what these laptops are. And even a lot of people listening to this and watching this, they will have no recollection and no idea of what technology used to be like in the 70s, in the 80s. And so you got to see this complete evolution. What has that been like for you to go from these giant couch-sized computers that had 5 megs on them to going to these tiny iPhones now that have, in some cases you can get up to a terabyte on an iPhone, which is back then, who knows how much it would have cost? Millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating transformation, Jacob, and I've loved it. So back in the 1970s, we had a home computer. We had an Apple II Plus computer. I used to go to my friend's house who had a TRS-80. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but that was an old, very early days personal computer, and we used to write games on it back in the day. So having been involved in technology and computers from a very early stage, you're just used to it. It changes. And I have to remind, my kids are a little bit older. My oldest is 29, and he's in sales, and I have to remind him from time to time.
Don't tell me he works at IBM.
He does not. No. He works for a Boston-based SaaS company. That would have been great. Yeah. But I have to remind him, and I tell this because we have a 800-person organization that's doing selling and marketing at GoTo, and I have to remind most of them that when I started in sales, there was no email, right? Not only was there no web, right, but literally no one used email in sales. And in fact, strangely, in the late 1980s, we didn't even have voicemail. So back then, if you were trying to reach a customer and they were trying to reach you, literally there was a lady named B who sat in the reception area. And when I was out talking to customers, usually driving around in my car to meet with a local customer, she'd have to literally write on a little piece of paper that there was a message. So the point is that we have had wave after wave after wave of transformation in business. And the AI transformation we're going through right now it's massive, but so is the web, right? That was a massive thing. Mobile was a massive transformation. So this is another one, and I think that it's probably the one that is biggest and most disruptive to many people who are sort of early to mid-career, especially. But it's yet another thing. I'm excited for it. But there's going to be yet another one beyond this, right? Yeah. There's always every 10 years or so there's some massive disruption. and they may be of different scales, but it's just going to keep on going. And as people who are in this world of technology and business in general, your job is to adapt, right? And listen and understand what's going on and look at the data and figure out what's next. And there will always be something next.
But since you started off at IBM, I mean, I'm assuming that even back then, because you've been through several transformations, several evolutions of different types of technologies, hasn't the messaging always been the same? There's always been people who've said, "Oh my God, this is gonna, voicemails are gonna get rid of assistants."
Yes.
That automation is going to get rid of bank tellers, that being connected through software is going to get rid of offices. Like, there's always been this doom and gloom narrative of people who have been scared of things. All right, I mean, you go back hundreds, many hundreds of years, the Luddites. It's just been an ongoing story throughout technological evolution. So, as somebody who's gone through that, I mean, do you remember that? Have people always been telling you that? Oh my goodness, Peter,
Yeah.
bad things are going to happen with this. And now we're starting to see a similar narrative again with AI, right?
We are, and you're absolutely right, Jacob, is that people always fear change. And by the way, change isn't without impact. I mean, if you were there are jobs that don't exist anymore, but there are lots of new jobs that didn't exist back then. And believe me, like a data scientist didn't exist. And guess what? That job's going to change pretty fundamentally because of the tools that people now have to be a data scientist. You don't have to especially be the same level of technician that you have to be today to access some of the insights and information that you do. In every single phase brings change. And I mean, we were an agrarian society back at 150 years ago, and we're not anymore. And we're an information-based economy, certainly in North America and in a lot of the world. And every new change is going to be scary for people. And by the way, I would never say that there isn't going to be disruption. Of course there is, right? There are going to be, if you're early in your career, I think you have to think about how technology change is going to impact things. I had this conversation with one of our head of design, as an example, and back we probably 18 months ago we were starting to adopt more tools as design tools in the marketing side of our organization. And I said to him, this could be a scary time, but it's an incredibly exciting time at the same time. Think about what you can do if you actually harness these tools and figure out, as a creative professional, how do I think about taking advantage of some of these tools that can now make me do things much faster and change and innovate. So there's, I think there are going to be people. There are always people who resist change, who have a hard time, and there are people who embrace change. And the people who embrace it and get in front of it, they're going to be very successful, regardless of the career path that they're on. They're going to absolutely take advantage of these new innovations, and they're going to do really well with it.
The quote, I don't remember who said it. Somebody can fact check me on this. It was. It's not that AI is going to replace humans. It's that people who use AI well are going to replace the people who don't know how to use AI, which I think is an interesting differentiating factor. And I'm seeing this too. I mean, I run a small team, and I already see this firsthand with just the people that I work with, as far as who is comfortable using AI and who is not. And I'm able to see very clear differences in terms of who's more productive, who's coming up with better ideas, things of that nature. So I thought we could spend the rest of our time talking about the pros and the cons, because there's definitely some very strong pros, but there are also some aspects of AI that I don't know if I would call them cons, but maybe we're not thinking through as much as we should be. And maybe we can unpack that a little bit too. And I know you just did a big survey, right? Your 2025 Pulse of Work survey. You surveyed 2,500 people, and you got some interesting insights in there. And as I was going through the report, at least for me, one of the most interesting insights was that 62% say AI has been very overhyped.
Yes.
I run a CHRO group called Future of Work Leaders, and we have dozens of CHROs in there. And the consensus from CHROs and I don't have, I didn't do like a formal survey, but during these conversations, I'm also getting the sense from them that it's also overhyped. And it's not that they're not using it and finding value out of it. They are, right? They're using it for things like helping write job descriptions, to help analyze data, to help maybe prepare for a meeting. But these are, I guess you could call them surface level AI applications. Like nobody's fully turning over their systems to AI. Nobody's fully investing in the agentic aspect where they're giving control and autonomy to these systems to go do the work that they needed to go do. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on the overhyped, because I don't know how many trillions of dollars have been put into, Microsoft, OpenAI, right? Anthropic. So much money is being thrown into this. And I think there's still a big debate around whether or not we're seeing the productivity gains that are justifying the massive investments that we're seeing. So what's
Yeah.
your
So
your
here's
thoughts on this?
my view, Jacob. I think it's overhyped and underhyped at the same time, right? So
Okay.
we're in the trough of disillusionment is where we are right now, right? So there's so much excitement of what's going on, but there's also we're in this world where it's not fully been democratized. So not everybody really has access to these tools or education about how to use these tools, especially in their day-to-day work. So I think that's what's coming from this employee survey that we did, this Pulse of Work survey. And there was a really fascinating thing when I looked at it, I go, huh? That's a weird kind of stat.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it's coming from. This idea that everyone's talking about it, and everyone's talking about the fear element of it is real for people, obviously, but they're not especially changing their day-to-day work. And some of that is because some companies, I mean, we do it. We restrict the use of some tools for AI because people don't really understand how to use things yet. I mean, today, most people know I'm not going to send my social security number or my credit card number on an email. Bad idea, right?
Yeah.
People don't yet understand that I shouldn't put sensitive information into an open LLM. Bad idea, right? Because you don't know where that data is going to go, right? It's going to be used for training. It can show up somewhere else. We don't really know. And as a result, companies are being a little bit conservative, appropriately, around accessing and providing access to employees on their networks with this kind of information. So some of it is that it's not fully available. The other thing is that you often see in these new innovations, Jacob, where they come out as sort of point solutions for their first phase. And as technology evolves and technology platforms evolve, you're going to start to see more sort of embedded within the systems people use day to day, these kinds of capabilities. And that's why, I mean, I look at, we have our business phone systems. GoToConnect is the thing where, one of the reasons we've seen it take off in our world is that they have a phone system, and now all of a sudden it's a automated AI assistant that can answer their phone for them. And it's literally, I just turn it on. It's not some new thing they have to deploy.
Yeah.
And that style of AI, I think, is going to be, that's deeply embedded within the tools that people use every day. That's going to start to deliver more for people, where it's actually they're not some other thing that they have to use. There's going to be some of that too, obviously. But I think that's where this gulf comes from, where people are hearing about it, but as they sit down to do their job every day, are they really using it? Is it changing and making their life easier? For some people, absolutely. And I'm sure you use these tools all the time. I mean, you're using Riverside, which is an awesome tool for recording, and it's going to AIify and do all your transcription and do all this stuff and pull out clips. It's wild and mind-bending, the productivity that you get as someone who is a creator. But not every employee has experienced that yet, and that's where they're feeling this gap in the hype to value delivery.
And just in case people are not familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, because you mentioned the idea, the trough of disillusionment, so I can just visually describe it for people. And it's kind of an interesting graph. People can look it up, but the initial kind of the bottom is the technology trigger, and then after the technology trigger, you have this huge spike. which is called the peak of inflated expectations, which some people, I've heard the argument made that that's where we are in terms of AI as well, where, we talk about AI and everyone gets so excited about it that we get these massive, massive expectations. We saw the same thing with augmented and virtual reality. We saw the same thing with Google Glass and Oculus. They're like this massive excitement. We have these huge expectations. And then from there, it kind of plummets and you get into this trough of disillusionment where people are like, actually, it sounded really cool, but we're not quite, it's not what it was promised to be. And then you get a slight uptick, the slope of enlightenment, and then it flattens out into this plateau of productivity. So from your perspective, you think we're in the trough of disillusionment where we've kind of seen and experienced what AI can do, and we have a massive imbalance between the impact that we thought it was going to have versus how we're actually using it and the applications, the real world applications of it.
Yeah, in like every technology, there are multiple curves that you're going across simultaneously. And so not everyone experiences the same thing, but I think what a lot of people are feeling is that level of disillusionment because it's not quite delivering up to the hype, and that's what that means.
I wonder.
I think this is going through a different cycle, though, which is interesting because, you mentioned something like virtual reality or augmented reality, and those are a little bit different because I think the application is, I think there was this vision that everyone's going to be walking around in, Minority Report style augmented reality kind of world.
Like Ready Player One, another great.
Exactly. Pick your favorite Hollywood interpretation of technology, and the reality is that's probably not the way that's going to work. And it's going to be much more of a verticalized, sort of industrial application or healthcare. They're very focused things where the innovation is incredibly valuable for people. AI is a little bit different because it's so broad and moving so quickly. It's going to feel a little bit more like the internet, right? Where the internet very quickly showed up as a transformative kind of thing. And when I'm saying the internet, I actually mean the web, right? The internet's been around since the 60s or something, right? So the web was really quickly transformative, but there was a big period of time where, in the mid-90s when this stuff came out, there was a bunch of really bad stuff, really terrible websites, really terrible experiences. And there was a lot of disillusionment there, but it moved very quickly through that curve. And I think the AI world is going to do something very similar because I think there's a very broad-based impact where, here's the thing, right? People may not even know that they're using AI when they're using AI. So a perfect example is, Google does this AI summarized results stuff. So if you use Google or Bing or your favorite search engine, you're using AI, right? And people may not really fully understand that, and they're actually getting some pretty compelling benefit from it.
They snuck it into Gmail too. There's now, in Google search, there's a AI version that you can use. So it's being snuck in there, and a lot of people don't even realize that they're using it per se, which I think is pretty interesting. But do you think we're at this trough of disillusionment from a culture perspective or from a technology perspective? Because, and I'm specifically referring to the workplace, because it seems like from a capability perspective, the technology is there to be able to do all sorts of really cool things. But from a culture perspective, we're not comfortable yet fully unleashing technology into the organization, right? I mean, I haven't heard of any company, for example, that says, hey, you know what? We're going all in on agentic AI. We're going to roll it out and let the bots do everything, right? So even though it might have, and we don't know for sure, we think it has the capability to do that, whether you look at ChatGPT or, your favorite AI tool, we're still holding it back. A lot of companies are deploying their own internal versions of these tools, and they're, one or two versions back because they have to test security, they have to test privacy, they have to go through all that sort of stuff. So so for me, it's hard to tell. I think it almost seems more of a cultural element that's putting us in the trough of disillusionment inside of organizations specifically, as opposed to the technology side. Because I mean, for me as a creator, I don't have to go through that, so I can use the latest AI tools. I'm seeing massive, um, applications and implications in the work that I do. But I don't have an IT team. I don't have somebody on legal. I don't have somebody in HR
Yeah.
that's, holding it back. So what's your thought on that? Is it more of a culture thing or an IT thing? Is it just not capable of doing the things we thought it was going to do?
I think you're on to a key point, that it is often about how companies adopt these technologies and make them available. That's the big gap right now. In fact, a really interesting stat from this Pulse of Work study that we did showed sort of the gap in the those different audiences. So when we did the survey, we asked IT people and we asked sort of employees. And these are knowledge workers in general that we're asking. And one question that we asked that was really interesting was about how effective people thought that companies were enabling the company with access to AI especially for remote and hybrid teams. And 91% of IT leaders said it was effective, but only 53% of employees thought it was effective.
Interesting.
And some of that is that, it probably depends on the word effective, right? What do you mean? And from an IT perspective, they're often in a position, these are people who are, have very difficult jobs in a lot of cases. They're about risk in a lot of cases, right? They have to protect an organization. So from them, the effectiveness may be, hey, we let them use some stuff and it's safe, which is one of the most important things as an IT professional. You need to make sure that your organization is safe.
Yeah.
And from an employee perspective, they may feel like, maybe I get some stuff, but I'm not really getting full advantage. Like you said, maybe we're not on the latest model and I can use this thing at home that is, GPT-5 and I'm using 4. And it must be better because, it's 20% better. It's 5 instead of 4, right? What's the deal? Why can't I have access to the latest stuff? So some of that is about the sort of the normal process that organizations go through to make sure that new technology is adopted in a way that is safe and secure for their companies in every way that safe is meaningful for them. It could be privacy safe, it could be access to other external threats, et cetera. So those things are probably creating some of this gap, Jacob.
Yeah, I think so too. So when you think about the pros of AI, and then we can talk about maybe some of the cons and challenges, because even in some of the stats that you had in your report, you alluded to the fact that a lot of people are saying AI is not being utilized to its full potential. There was another stat in there that said, what I think the majority of people surveyed said that they thought AI was going to help get rid of physical offices permanently.
Yeah.
And I think we also saw some similar stats when we talked about co-working back in the day, when we talked about collaboration tools back in the days of Chatter and Yammer and Lithium Technologies, all these old platforms, which some people may or may not remember. A lot of people said the same thing then too. So where are you in terms of like the impact, the pros? What can AI actually do for an organization if it's deployed and used properly in terms of, productivity, cost savings, remote work, anything?
Yeah, there are huge benefits to AI used properly. And like you said, and we'll get to the downsides. There are definite downsides that we have to be careful of, but they're huge benefits. I think the productivity in general is amazing, and that's a big word. It means a lot, obviously, but there are a few things to think about when it comes to productivity. One is the idea that one of the things I've been playing around with a lot is vibe coding kind of thing, right? So I've
tested that out too.
Yeah, so I before I worked at GoTo, I actually started a company, built it, grew it, and ended up selling it back in 2022. And when I started the company, I went and I have a degree in computer science, but I haven't been paid for writing code in a very long time. So I actually brought in an external team to build a prototype for my company for the first version. And it took about 4 months, and it cost me about $100,000 to build that prototype.
Wow.
And it was, pretty good prototype. And then over the last 3 weekends, I spent about 20 hours collectively. So clearly, I needed another hobby, and I built something that was a far more functional version of a different kind of application, but far more functional than that original prototype. And I think I spent $30 doing it, right?
Wow.
Using AI tools, right? And it was just really fascinating, the productivity that you can have in organizations. I mean, think about your uses of AI. You use it every day. Think about the amount of work it would take to transcribe a podcast and pull out clips and do all these things. There's huge productivity gains. Now, that also means cost savings in a lot of ways, right? So that's some of the downside, right? So that means that, hey, if there are cost savings, then that means, hey, maybe I'm not paying someone who was doing that before for me, as an example, but maybe you were the guy who's just hustling and doing it all yourself, and you can spend more time with your family. There are other things that are huge benefits of AI, like what I think of the things that our customers get the most excited about is, I look at things like our communications platforms, where we deal with a lot of small businesses who are open from 8 to 6 or something, and you're a car dealer, and you don't have an after hours person there answering the phone all the time. So you have an automated AI assistant who can answer the phone, schedule service with you, or give you information about the latest deal in a car or something like that. You've actually delivered better customer experience than you could before, versus leave a message and I'll call you back. You can actually solve the problem for the customer. Maybe sold an extra car, right, is hugely valuable. Or if you're a dentist, right, someone may call a dentist because they want an appointment, and if you're not available, they'll call the next dentist, because there are a lot of them.
Speaking of dentists, did you see the viral video that was made with AI about the gorilla?
I didn't, no.
Oh my goodness! So you mentioned dentists, which kind of popped into my mind, but a dentist, and I can't remember where exactly he was based, but using AI, and it probably cost him a few $100s. He made these very viral videos of a gorilla that had a few beers and is like, I'm going skydiving. And, he goes skydiving and he lands funny, and he chips his tooth, and he's like, oh man, I chipped my tooth. I got to go find a dentist and this and that. And he created this whole story of this gorilla that drank too much and went skydiving and chipped its tooth and now needed to go find a dentist. And the story went viral everywhere. It was picked up by all sorts of different outlets. It was shared on social media. It's on YouTube, all over the place. And last I heard, as a result of this ad, I mean, the business just skyrocketed. It boomed. And, to do something like that in the past, how much money would that cost? Hundreds of thousands, $1 million? I've heard stories. Yeah.
Just the gorilla fees alone, right? To rent a gorilla.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I've heard stories of people that are using AI for commercials, for YouTube videos, even in commercials that are being shown on TV that are, they're spending a couple $100s to make these AI generated commercials, where before you'd need to hire a whole crew, you need to hire catering, you'd need to book a set. It would be $1 million+ You're getting it now in a couple $100, if that. So it's really wild to see what you're able to do with this stuff.
We're really at the beginning, and there's so much innovation going on. If you think about it, these are broad tools that are extremely powerful, and if you give new innovative things to creative people, it's amazing what happens, right? And people can create ways to grow the business, to save money, to be creative, to save the world, to solve diseases. There's so many of these positive things out there. We could go on all day talking about the positive impact. Yeah. We should at some point talk about, what are the warning signs, right? What are the things we should be careful about?
I have one question about the productivity thing, because I was listening to a podcast, I think it was the All In podcast, and they were talking about, and so this is in terms of the productivity gains, because there have been some stories that have been emerging, and I've heard this from a couple of executives that I've interviewed as well, where they are now they're going kind of down the rabbit hole when it comes to productivity for AI. So one of the big challenges, at least I see, right? If you're having a conversation with a person and you're having a debate and a back and forth, eventually it comes to a natural conclusion. Maybe you talk for 30 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then the conversation is done because people are, there's no more left to say. But AI will keep the conversation going for as long as you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've heard stories of executives who are up till 2, 3 in the morning trying to, here's more data, make it even better, tweak this, tweak that. And so they're actually spending more time with AI because they want something to be perfect and they go down this rabbit hole. And you know what I mean? Like it can be never ending. And I think it was Jeff Bezos who said that, you should have 70% of the information before you're able to make a decision. And so the challenge now is, I think with AI, people want 100% of the information before they make a decision. And the gap between from 70% to 30% could mean, lost hours in productivity if you don't know when to stop. Right. And I've experienced this too. Like I'm working on book cover designs or I'm trying to do some sort of analysis for something. And, sometimes I find that I'm spending 3, 4, 5 hours having a conversation with AI because I'm looking for like the perfect answer, the perfect book cover, when in reality, I should have stopped like 3 hours ago. So I could see how the rabbit hole of AI might counterbalance the productivity gains if we don't know when to stop. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And you can certainly see this. And some of it is that if you look at the current way that these AI chatbots, like a ChatGPT or a Claude, the way they work, right? The way they work is they're designed to be encouraging and supportive to draw you in and keep you engaged with the answer. And I think that's a current design point for the way that these things work. I think that's going to evolve. I think at some point, as people get smarter using these tools, and the tools get a little bit smarter, there's no huge benefit for them to keep trying 17 different iterations of the same thing. At some point, it probably says, Jacob, I think we're good. Maybe we should stop, right? We're getting to diminishing returns. So I think that will change, and some of it is just the current way that these tools, and I think the tools are designed this way to be encouraging, to encourage people to adopt at that first layer, to get people educated to the point where, hey, this isn't a search engine, right? It's meant to be conversational. And if you think about it, most people, when they engage with an LLM-based chat tool, they're using it like a search engine, right? They're going in and they're typing something in the way they talk to Google. And as a result, these companies are trying to build the interactions in a way so that it encourages people to go deeper. And I think that's what's creating some of the problem. And I suspect that will change over time as people get smarter with the way that these things work. Because otherwise, we're just burning a lot more electricity in data centers somewhere unnecessarily and going through more billions of dollars of people's venture capital. So I don't think that's necessary over time.
Okay, so then going back to the pros, so when used properly, we're definitely seeing productivity. You had the example of the customer service representative. I think in HR, we can certainly see that in terms of either preparing for a meeting or analyzing data, getting ready for a presentation. One executive that I spoke with recently said that he created his own AI board of directors. And so basically he created 3 different bots, or not bots, 3 different GPTs. And one was in the style of, I don't know, like a Warren Buffett, for example. Another one is in the style of Steve Jobs, and maybe another one is in the style of another executive or a philosopher. And so this executive told me that whenever they're in the process that they need to make a decision or they need to try to figure something out, they go to their board of advisors, so to speak. They put in the situation, what they're going through, and they try to get feedback. And so they're getting feedback from AI in the personality of what would Warren Buffett do? What would Elon Musk or Steve Jobs do? What would, somebody else do? And it helps inform their decisions. And I thought that was a very interesting example of how we can use AI. I mean, I can also see challenges in that. But I think we're starting to see some of these very creative and interesting examples of how we're able to use AI for something like a board of directors, right? Because you don't have access to a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk, but you might have access to AI that can respond in a similar way, that has access to all the things that they've ever said and can give you insights. And so it's kind of I don't know, creepy and insightful at the same time.
It is. And I'll tell you, because not everybody's a CEO and has a board of directors to deal with. So maybe that is more of an edge case application, but a very similar application we actually use internally. We use AI tools to do coaching for our salespeople as we roll out new messages. And what that does is we basically get as we communicate to the sales team, this is how you should talk about these new products. We have them call with a virtual customer, and that customer will ask them questions and follow up, and they can actually provide coaching to them and feedback along the way. So it's a very similar kind of application, but it's one that's a little bit more for the masses. And I think it is and you can tune it, right? You can tune it, make the customer grumpy, right? Or make it in this vertical, right? What does it mean for a dentist versus someone who's in manufacturing, as an example? So one of the things that these tools are really good at doing is sort of taking on a persona. And I think that you're seeing much more. A lot of the applications that we deal with today, Jacob, are very much focused on just generic application of intelligence or knowledge. And this idea of tuning to a specific persona, like you mentioned, is really compelling. And I mean, we do that. So we have IT support tools. So we train these bots to know everything about IT support and everything about the way our customers support their. So they take on that persona, and I think you're going to see more and more these sort of persona tuned. People will be, not only did the systems need generalized intelligence, but a lot of tools that we're interacting with today on a day-to-day basis have very specific experience and intelligence around a domain. And that's the thing that gets really powerful to people. If you call up a voice assistant, and that voice assistant should know everything about your company, right? And that's the kind of thing that it used to be very difficult to do. But just like you said in this application of your friend you were talking to, it's a very similar thing. It's quite simple to set up these things to take on a specific set of expertise. Which can be really powerful to help solve problems for people.
And it's been working well for you using the AI for the coaching?
It is, yeah. It's been really great, and what works really well is that the salespeople really like it. And I wasn't so sure about it. I thought they might go, well, wait a minute, I'm talking to a machine. Is this weird? But they like getting the feedback, and it's also, in a way, it's almost like, I got this rash. Can I get, I don't want to, ask my friend about this rash. I'm going to talk to Google. It feels a little bit more anonymous, right? And it's probably that kind of thing where you can take feedback from a robot in a way that may feel like, hey, this isn't personal. This is a robot trying to help me learn a little bit more. And it's because it's not a person. I think that's a case where it being a machine is probably better in that case, because you're not going to feel like some person is critical of me. You're actually taking feedback in a way where they don't know me. It's not me saying that Jacob is bad at telling the story. It's you use it more as it's more of a positive experience for people, and they get the an unbiased feedback about how well it works.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges. So we alluded to one that we talked about, kind of the productivity I don't know if you want to call it a gap or a potential productivity drain if people don't know where to shut these tools off. Another challenge that I see is, the idea of outsourcing critical thinking to AI, where basically what happens is that you as a person just become the physical manifestation of ChatGPT. And so you're just repeating what it tells you to repeat, right? You ask it for feedback and it'll give you feedback and you'll say it to somebody else. You'll ask it to write an email, you'll copy and paste it. You're going to go into a meeting and say you're presenting on a subject, help me present it better. And you're going to copy and paste the slides. And so you remove your brain from the process and you just literally copy and paste. Do you see that as one potential challenge?
I do. In fact, what I tell people all the time is the way to think about a tool like ChatGPT is like it's a really efficient junior analyst. So if you are an executive and you've got a team that says, "Hey, go tell me about this market and tell me some insights about it," you're not going to just take that and say, "Oh, that's the answer." You're going to read it. You're going to think critically about it.
Hopefully,
right? I mean, that's what you need to do. And by the way, some people are going to take their human analyst and they're going to take it like it's gospel, and it's not. And you have to understand that there's value to experience and context that you may have that's not fully communicated to this thing. Obviously, these things can hallucinate, although they're doing it less and less these days. But you have to understand what it is that you're getting. And what you're getting is a statistical synthesis of information, which may not tell you some brand new insight that's never existed before. There's still this huge value in human creativity, in human insight and thought to take ideas to the next level. That doesn't mean that these tools aren't amazingly valuable when it comes to, go give me a starting point to think about a new idea, or bring in something that I haven't thought about before. And even creative people can use these tools to come up with some catalysts for their next creative idea. That's totally fine. But you can't think about it as the thing that's going to give you a 100% perfect answer every time, or even any time. You have to think about it as input, and that's the thing. I suspect that a lot of people are pretty lazy about it because it's easy to just ask the question and just assume that it's 100% right all the time. And you're right, it is a downside, Jacob, that if you just blindly follow the bot, you're probably not going to always have a great result.
Well, and it's also, there's a lot of accountability that leaders need to play. So I was recently giving a talk for a large organization, and then somebody was working on the AI team, and she said, "Well, what do leaders need to know about creating employees who are fluent with AI? Like, what should the leader be doing?" And my response to her is, you need to know how to have conversations about AI with your team. And so if you have somebody on your team that's either presenting or delivering something, you need to get comfortable asking them, "Hey, did you use AI for this? Did you find any mistakes that maybe AI made? What do you think about the results that AI put together? Do you think AI missed something?" And so leaders, I think, are going to need to do a much better job of pushing their employees to think critically and to challenge them and to question them, not in a "I don't trust you" kind of way, but to stimulate their critical thinking and their creative thought processes and innovation. Otherwise, it's like with GPS. There are a lot of people who, even if they're driving 1 mile away from home, they still turn on their GPS. Even though they know exactly where they're going, they still have to have GPS on. And a lot of the studies out there show that when you rely so much on GPS, you deteriorate and eventually kill a small part of your brain that is designed for navigation. And so what eventually happens is that you can't function unless you have a smartphone that's telling you, turn left here, turn right there, even though you're in familiar territory. And so my worry is that we can potentially get to a scenario like that inside of organizations where employees they're going to be scared to respond to their manager, to send an email, to be a part of a discussion, unless they first, is this okay, right? Going to ChatGPT and getting permission and approval and analysis for it. So leaders, I think, are really going to need to be mindful of challenging and probing their employees for how they're using AI and what they think about it, and trying to get additional thoughts and perspectives on top of what AI might provide. I mean, does that make sense to you? Do you see that as an important skill? And I think it's a new skill that leaders are going to need to embrace.
I do, and I think it's a really smart thing that you're advocating, Jacob, to have people, managers, ask their employees, "Hey, what did you not take from AI, right?" And just coach them in that direction to think critically. And I agree, it's really important to help people understand, and sometimes they just need some tools to do this. And here's the way I think about it. I told you I grew up with a bunch of scientists, which is an interesting thing, right? And when you grow up with a bunch of scientists and a bunch of people who are sort of academics, what happens is there's a lot of debate. So I grew up with a lot of debate around my dinner table as a young person, and I'm just used to this idea of peer review. And this idea of testing ideas in a way that is important to actually get to the truth, which is an important concept that people need to use, and regardless of whether they're using AI or not. And it's funny because sometimes people are kind of taken aback because I'll argue, not like yelling, but I will take an opposite position from them all the time, because it's really important to try to introduce new perspectives into an idea to make sure you really fully understand it, especially if it's an important decision. As an example, if you were deciding to go into a brand new market for your company, would you go to ChatGPT and say, which one should I go to? I mean, you might to get ideas, but it wouldn't I wouldn't just take that as, a material decision that has long-term impact for a business. You'd have to really debate that and have the discourse. And I think what you're advocating is just a really good, simple tool for leaders to ask the question, right? What did you think was wrong with that answer, as an example? Because if they say, well, I didn't think about it that way, great. Let's think about it, reframe the discussion, and try to introduce, really try to find the flaws. Because when you identify the flaws, what will happen is the really good parts will show up in more relief, and you'll have a better idea of what the really powerful impact is from the concept.
Yeah. There's also conversations that are happening more so on the personal side, but you can see this happening inside of organizations as well, becoming friends, right? People who are falling in love with AI, in their personal lives, AI boyfriends, AI girlfriends. And sometimes I wonder if we can extend that into the workplace, where you're going to have such a good friend in AI that if you leave the company or transition to a team, like, do you see that? And I know some of these things might sound totally crazy for people who are listening and watching, like, what the hell is Jacob talking about here? But if you remember the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix, I don't even remember, what was that, like a decade ago? It was a while ago that movie came out.
Yeah, it was probably 15 years ago now. Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, that's crazy that it was 15 years ago. But it's happening. I mean, in personal lives, it's happening. There are stories, there are examples. It's like, it's out there. And some news stories are coming out around similar things happening inside of organizations, because you spend so much time at work, you get a lot of connection and purpose and friendship and those social elements from the workplace, that you could imagine a situation where something like that happens at work. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting and unique challenge for HR professionals and for leaders to coach and guide employees on all the different aspects of AI, right? Not outsourcing critical thinking to it, not treating it like it's a best friend, knowing when to stop using it, because it can be very addicting, almost like a video game, right? And you have to know when to, what to use it for, because it's a tool at the end of the day. And if you treat it as more than a tool, I think you can have some serious challenges.
I think you're really right, Jacob. And if you think about it, by the way, this isn't a new problem, right? That people tend to create almost unnatural relationships with technology. So think about this, right? How many people are so into their iPhone, right? That
Yeah.
it's like their buddy, right? Or even in other things. So people have a crazy unnatural relationship with their car in some cases, if they're car people, right? They name it. They all these
Their
things,
dog,
right?
like my
So
dog who's sitting back here.
yeah, exactly. There are lots of ways people do this, but I think you're really right. In fact, we spend a lot of time with our employees helping them understand how to use AI, when to use AI, and we haven't broached this idea yet, but I think it's an important one we should bring into the discussion is sort of when do you turn it off, right? And what are the boundaries, and when is it appropriate, when is it not appropriate? What are sort of the warning signs that you're sort of a little too deep into this thing? I think it's an important thing for leaders to understand how people are going to take advantage of these things.
Yeah.
Because it's like any technology is that very powerful tools. Powerful tools can be used for good or for bad, and there's overuse in lots of different areas. So you just have to find a way to really understand where the value is. And the most important thing, and this is back to where we're going to see in most companies, where you're going to see the most material use of these AI capabilities is deeply embedded within the workflows that people are using in their day-to-day job.
And then
And go ahead.
I was going to say, and then part of the challenge becomes, will having boundaries hinder the potential positive impacts? Because one of the things that, how you get the impact and some of these productivity gains and cost savings from AI in a lot of situations is you have to unleash it, right? We even say that, unleash the power of AI. And so it'll be very interesting to see if you don't unleash it fully, but you're kind of like, okay, you can use it for an hour or 2 hours, or we're going to challenge you around it, right? It's almost like having a Lamborghini and saying, well, you can't drive it past 80 miles an hour because we don't want you to get in an accident.
Right.
And then it's sort of like, well, okay. I mean, I guess I can never really experience the full power of the Lamborghini. So it's sort of similar with AI. And I think it'll be a very interesting battle between how much do we want to unleash it versus how do we balance that with guardrails, with shutting off, with boundaries, with all those types of things.
Well, let's be even truer to the metaphor, right? You talked about your dog earlier. You'd unleash your dog in the backyard or in the park. Would you do it in Times Square? No, right? So you have to find the right, what's the length of the leash? What are the boundaries that you're going to operate within? I think those are critical things to understand. Is what are the rules of in the boundaries that you're going to use? But you need to give people some latitude to take advantage of these capabilities, just like you want your dog to be able to run around more than 6 feet. So it's the same kind of thing, and I think with AI tools, it's going to depend on the job and the specific work that you're doing. If someone is sitting there and doing they're producing creative content all day long. You know what? They probably need a degree of freedom around what they're doing because they're a creative professional. If your job is focused on, you're in a call center, as an example, you know what? For them, they're going to have more guardrails. They may be presented with some insights and information. They may have some, very focused tools that help them, pull up some insights about what the customer is asking, as an example. Yep. Or the manager may have some view in real time and what the customer sentiment is from the call, so they can say, hey, Jacob, you're actually got an annoyed customer there. Maybe you should tone it down. So it really depends on the kind of job. But some people are going to have much broader boundaries. Other people are going to be really focused in, have a tighter fence that they can run around in.
I love it. Peter, I feel like we could talk for another hour. Where can people go to learn more about this new report that you put out, to connect with you, with GoTo, anything that you want to mention for people to check out?
Sure. Well, I think we can probably give you a link to the survey directly, but check us out at goto.com, GOTO.com. And you can follow me on LinkedIn is probably the best place where I'm most active, and I'll send you a link to that too, Jacob, if you could drop it in the notes. I thank you for having a great conversation. I know I could keep going all day, and would love to have you. And I think we're in agreement. You're going to join us on our
Yes,
podcast soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun. Part two.
Part two on our Go Further podcast. So looking forward to that. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, my guest has been Peter Mahoney, Chief Commercial Officer at GoTo. And make sure to also check out their podcast. I'm going to be a guest on there very soon as well. And I'll see all of you next week. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Future Ready Leadership. If you want to get access to more content on how you can become future ready, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's thefutureorganization.com/newsletter. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to somebody who you would like to see become a better leader. Thanks for listening or watching, and I will see you next time.